The Habsburg jaw.
The worst part about this image is I literally have seen people that look almost like this.
Look at any royal portrait. You see divine bloodlines, perfect genetics, rulers chosen by God himself.
Rulers chosen by God himself. Damn, bro. Don't you just wish you were born into one of these families? What about the peasants? That's what I'm going to be thinking about. The king born with liquid bones and a skull full of water.
Power, wealth, the best of everything life could offer.
We are in the 21st century. 19th century is going to be the 1800s.
You're looking at a lie. The most powerful royal family in Europe didn't fall from grace. They destroyed themselves from the inside out. Their pure bloodline became so contaminated that their final king couldn't close his mouth. Couldn't chew food, couldn't produce an heir. His own mother recoiled in horror when he was born. Function.
I can't. His own mother recording when he was born is something else. Surely there were signs and indicators before this. They didn't just make the assumption. Surely there were markers before this kid was born that they shouldn't be doing this incest thing anymore. Trick everybody else in civilization that you're special and important, that you're royalty. Then I guess you're going to go to extreme lengths to maintain that power over everybody else and over civilization, right? I wonder how that first came to be, though. Just convince other people that they're special and deemed to rule over individuals. Isn't there something about the Habsburgs that actually led to the revolution? Rated individual that can't even speak, can't chew food, that literally has to swallow food like a camel. Why are we allowing this person to rule over us and pretend as if they're special and important?
He was heir to the greatest empire on earth. This is one of the only documented cases in history where we can see exactly what happens when humans push genetics past the breaking point. Modern scientists who analysed his DNA found something that shouldn't be possible. He was more inbred than if his parents were siblings. What you're about to
More inbred as if his parents were siblings. What the hell does that mean? Does it mean that his mother was a sister as well?
see is both tragic and terrifying. It's the story of how the most powerful dynasty in the world turned their own bodies into a...
How can you be more inbred than siblings? Siblings have two children, male and female, and then there's two children, then they give birth to a child. I don't even think the child would actually come about. It'd just be impossible. It'd just continuously die in the womb over and over again.
biological nightmare. Let me take...
And why is it like mouses and rats? Incest doesn't really matter to those animals. For human beings, it's completely different. Maybe God does exist.
you back to November 6th, 1661, to a dimly lit chamber in the royal palace of Madrid. The midwives have just delivered the heir to the Spanish throne and something is terribly wrong. The baby's head is grotesquely large, his breathing laboured. But here's what the history books don't tell you. His own mother, Queen Mariana...
Why is his head massive? Or why is his jaw normal, but his head... He looks like that Megamind meme. Why is he holding a ruler?
refused to nurse her own child. This wasn't maternal cruelty.
That came out of me. You did it with your bro.
You see, Queen Mariana wasn't just Charles's mother, she was also his cousin.
An aunt or a niece? Or maybe she married an uncle?
And his aunt. How is that possible?
Cousin and
Because his father, Philip IV, had married his own niece. You're trying to work out that family tree in your head right now. Don't bother, it's not a tree, it's a circle. But to understand how we got to this moment, to understand how a baby could be born so genetically compromised that his own mother...
Oh my god, they all look the same. They look similar, but they don't look notably hit in this.
Back to when the Habsburg dynasty first discovered the dark magic of keeping power in the family, literally. The Habsburgs had a saying, "Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry." It sounds romantic until you realise they meant marrying each other.
Yeah.
For almost 200 years, the Spanish branch of the Habsburg family had been marrying cousins, uncles, wedding nieces, and in some cases double first cousins uniting in matrimony. They called it maintaining the purity of blood.
Maintaining the power and making sure it's not outside power coming in to seize that away, which is of course what eventually always happens because that's becoming democratic within their little elite circles. They did incest for 200 years and they kept it pretty uptight, like cousins. This kind of explains why I see people in Britain, and sometimes I see a girl in Britain and their faces, they'll be attractive, but there's something about them that just, and I'm just thinking, you look very British.
Scientists now call it genetic suicide. Here's a number that will blow your mind. Over 80% of Spanish Habsburg marriages were between close relatives. 80%. Not distant cousins you might meet at a family reunion. We're talking about people who shared grandparents, or in some cases, parents. By the time Charles II was born, all 8 of his great-grandparents descended from the same couple.
Are these people all willing participants, or are they sort of just forced into it, or they are willing participants? Maybe it's the grooming or manipulation from a young age of understanding, well, this is just how we do things. Another thing that's so curious about this is that well, we always read about, or the most obvious or apparent history is always of these kings and queens, right? It's the reserved history. It's the history that stayed, the history that was saved. Hundreds of thousands and millions of people existed at that time, at these people in the 17th century. It's like the catacombs in France. Millions of bodies just underneath Paris. No name, no recollection of their family, and yet you'll know about the kings and the queens and the...
Modern genetic analysis has calculated Charles's inbreeding coefficient. That's the percentage of his genes that were identical copies from common ancestors, at 0.254.
Damn old DNA.
To put that in perspective, children of brother-sister incest have an inbreeding coefficient of 0.25. Charles II was more inbred than a child of siblings, but numbers don't capture the human cost. Let me paint you a picture of what this meant.
Imagine the horror of all the like servants and the maids and having to deal with this, and everyone's just like secretly saying things, but no one actually says the thing that matters. Like, yeah, let's put this guy out of his misery.
Properly. His mouth was already showing signs of deformity.
You think?
His skull bones hadn't fused properly, leaving his head misshapen and swollen. The court physicians
let's just put a skull on top of a baby.
Noted he had a weak suck and struggled to feed. In an era before formula, this was life-threatening. The wet nurses hired to feed him reported something disturbing. The infant rarely cried, not because he was content, but because he seemed to lack the energy. He would lie there, pale and still, his oversized head lolling to one side, his breathing shallow and raspy. The physicians, the best in Spain.
I can't take this seriously. The baby's sitting there with a blue head. Pimp is putting rubbing milk on his chest. Biggest, best grift of YouTube right now is that you ask ChatGPT, it writes you an entire script. I think there was another video I almost watched earlier, recently, and I could tell it was ChatGPT because when I ask ChatGPT questions, it gives you this weird condescending vibe. You're not crazy. It's not that exactly, but it's this. AI is complete slop. I think the real intentions behind AI are surveillance. They're not building AI data centers for the common person. Seizing land and building all this infrastructure and destroying local communities because they're taking all the water supply to power their AI data stations. They're not doing that for the people. The actual real goal, I think, of AI is to make robots so there can never be some sort of uprising or revolution, right? Or it all goes to shit and they retreat to the underground bunkers and bomb everything.
An infant so fundamentally broken.
But the point is that they want a robot army so that any rebellion is basically impossible.
As months turn to years, the true extent of...
Not like that's ever going to happen because, one, people are content with their piece of shit streaming services, and two, even though people are getting riled up now, they're getting riled up at the wrong people for the wrong reasons. Yeah, okay, you don't like immigration. I don't think most people like immigration. It doesn't make any damn sense. But then you fail to see or realize that it's the same people that you want to vote for that actually love the immigration, because then they can just distract you with that bullshit. They don't want to actually solve the issue. They're not going to solve any issue. They want to keep it and then keep the separation between lower class and everybody and the elite. Otherwise they don't get to feel special, right? And everyone's got to feel like Michael Jackson these days, doing whatever you damn please and everyone praising you because you make good music.
The true extent of Charles's condition began to reveal itself. And this is where the story gets truly disturbing. At age 4...
We already learnt that he's more inbred than the child of 2 siblings. We already learnt that he was born with a blue head. It was lopsided and weighed down. We already know that he was born... God, how'd she even give birth to this monkey with a giant goddamn chin so far? It extends so far. It probably hit the clip when it was coming out. Only now is it going to get disturbing, guys.
Years old, Charles still couldn't walk. Not wouldn't, couldn't. His legs were thin as sticks, bowed from rickets, unable to support even his small body weight. Servants carried him everywhere in specially designed chairs. The future king of Spain had to be carried like an infant. But
imagine this just being your life. Like, you've just got entire other human beings just carrying you around everywhere. You probably spend your entire time in an enclosed... I mean, you see the castles, right? They're fenced off and closed off from the rest of society. Back in the day, that was to keep all the peasants out. And, you know, you'd get fresh food. You'd have farms of chickens and fresh fruit. I mean, even now, you go on them out, like even like 100 years ago, you can see orchards that were basically functional 100 years ago. And that's just where the rich people just hung out and did whatever they were doing. It's like paradise for them. Well, meanwhile, everybody else is just suffering, living in mud huts. And these people would be committing crimes day in and day out. The crime against humanity of incest, for instance. And it's completely fine for them to be doing it. But if you did that as a commoner, then apparently you'd probably just get your head lopped off, wouldn't you? And they wonder why the revolution happened and the guillotines came out.
It gets worse.
Unfortunately, the guillotines didn't make it to Britain.
At 4 years old, Charles also couldn't speak. Not a single word. His tongue, already showing signs of abnormal growth, filled his mouth. His jaw, that infamous Habsburg jaw, was already protruding.
Don't show us Deb's 9.
When he finally did speak his first words, sometime after his 4th birthday, They were
Anyone find it weird how that Maxwell person has basically just been promoted to a more safer, better secure prison? She's given a lot of leeway and allowance, despite the fact that they have all the evidence and they know exactly what that person's been doing. Now she's just getting special treatment just because. You know, that's what people are supposed to be paying attention to. That's why you're supposed to be rioting. You're supposed to be in the streets protesting, but nobody does it. I think it's part and part that just people generally just don't care about any of that. They're like, shrug shoulders. It's like, oh, you're just confirming what we already suspected anyway, right? So that's why people aren't doing it. But it's also because of the severe distraction that these people and these institutions keep creating and keeping people away from the ball. Your eye's not on the ball. It's whatever they want you to be thinking about. That's why they brought TikTok as well. I mean,
blurred, wet, incomprehensible.
My favorite part about those files, though, is the fact we didn't even get to like the obvious abundance of videos and images and transcripts that they obviously had, but they're buried. I mean, you got to think that the Pam Bond, and she came out and said, oh, there aren't no files, after she confirmed that there's files and that they're there and that some of them have been released and yada, yada, yada. And then they tested the waters with maybe like screwing over Bill Gates and then using him as a fall guy. And then like, nah, we don't need to do this. We're just going to get away with it. Under the rug it goes and everyone's just forgotten about it. You know, let's make a war. The war exists to create strain on everybody, so we can't actually think about anything else, or people can't, but I genuinely just don't think that anything would happen.
His Majesty's speech required interpretation. Let me describe what they meant by that. Charles's tongue was so enlarged that it constantly protruded from his mouth. His lower jaw jutted out so severely that his lips couldn't close. This meant that when he attempted to speak, saliva would...
Like, wouldn't you, in your AI prompt, tell it to give you that Habsburg jaw on every single image?
...or from his mouth. Royal attendants stood ready with silk cloths to constantly wipe the drool from the chin of the boy who would be king. Imagine a normal human skull, then grab the lower jaw and pull it forward several inches. Now imagine that the upper jaw didn't grow to match. The result? A mouth that can never fully...
Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. The racists will get off on that.
...close. Teeth that can never meet. A tongue with nowhere to properly rest.
So basically a snake.
In portraits...
Bro was literally an anaconda.
Artists tried to minimize it, painting Charles with his mouth slightly open as if caught mid-word. In reality, his mouth was always open.
So he was more grotesque than any of the actual real images of this person present.
Because it couldn't physically close.
Again, the levels that these people went to maintain this illusion that they're important and special. These people should have been strung up, executed for their crimes against humanity, and yet they just weren't. Well, they were eventually.
Ambassadors meeting the young prince for the first...
You just got to put these people in the perspective of, like, imagine they were like this like in regular society today. All these people basically just play acting, thinking this is okay or thinking this is like normal. Nothing about this is normal. This is bizarre.
Foreign ambassadors meeting the young prince for the first time often struggled to maintain their composure. One French diplomat's private letters described the shock. The prince's appearance defies description. His jaw protrudes so far that he appears to have two faces, one stacked in front of the other.
That is bizarre.
When he attempts to eat, food falls from his mouth. When he speaks, one must stand back to avoid the spray.
Jesus
and
Christ.
Eating. God, the eating. Charles couldn't chew. Think about that for a moment. Every meal, every day for his entire life, Charles II had to swallow his food whole like a pelican.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be compassionate because he didn't choose this, right? He didn't choose this. He didn't want to come into the world being absolute omega level deformity, absolutely crass thing. There is no God's image thing going on here. This is an absolute abomination. But you're out here using the descriptive language telling me he's eating food completely whole, like in one gulp, like an anaconda, in this case a pelican. I can't keep it together.
His teeth, upper and lower, were separated by such a gap that they never met. Court dining became an exercise in creative cuisine. Meats had to be cut into tiny pieces, vegetables were pureed, bread was soaked in wine until it dissolved. The English ambassador, Alexander Stanhope, wrote one of the most visceral descriptions. His Catholic Majesty swallows all he eats whole, for his nether jaw stands so much out that his 2 rows of teeth cannot meet, to compensate which, he has a prodigious stomach and swallows a whole lamb at 2 meals.
A prodigious stomach? Well, that's one way to try and paint this as a skill.
But physical deformity was just the beginning.
A talent.
As Charles grew, or rather failed to grow properly, other problems emerged. He suffered from constant illnesses. Measles nearly killed him at age 6. Then came chickenpox, which left him covered in scars. Then rubella, then smallpox.
Oh, he's like me.
Each disease that swept through the palace found in Charles an eager host, his compromised immune system offering little resistance. The smallpox was particularly cruel. It struck when Charles was 9, and for weeks he lay between life and death. His face,
A mercy.
already distorted, became a battlefield of pustules and lesions. When he finally recovered,
Again,
the scars joined the catalogue of his disfigurements.
where's the Habsburg jaw?
But the disease left something else, a complication that would haunt him
Hello, tattoo people. I need you to recreate all your paintings, and I need the Habsburg jaw.
The physicians noticed fluid building up in his skull.
Oh my god.
His already large head began to swell further. Today we call it hydrocephalus, water on the brain. In the 17th century they called it another curse upon the prince. The pressure caused blinding headaches, vision problems, and possibly contributed to
Why has this dude got a skull for a head on the right? Holy AI.
the seizures that would plague his later years, rebellious or lazy, but because he simply couldn't learn. Tutors reported that lessons had to be repeated dozens of times. Basic mathematics was beyond him. Latin, the language of royalty and diplomacy, might as well have been ancient Egyptian. His handwriting, on the
That's
rare
what's mean.
occasions he attempted it, looked like the scrawls of a much younger child. One tutor's private notes, discovered centuries later, paint a heartbreaking picture. His Majesty tries with great effort but retains nothing. I explain a concept, and by the next day, it is as if he has never heard it. His attention wanders. Sometimes he stares at nothing for long periods. When asked what he is thinking, he cannot say. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. As Charles entered puberty, or what should have been
Oh god, here we go.
puberty, his body betrayed him in new
Oh, his penis was black hardcore. It was like charcoal, and it was frailed. It was falling apart at the seams. He had one nut.
He grew, but barely. While other royal teenagers shot up in height, Charles remained stunted. His voice, instead of deepening, stayed high and thin. Body hair? Barely any. The characteristics that marked a boy becoming a man simply didn't happen. The court physicians were consulted. In hushed conferences, they discussed what they
At
observed.
what point did they just go, maybe we need to make a new child, and maybe this new child, we need to like go for a third cousin instead of going for, direct sibling?
They had not put in official.
Like, you better get to work quick. So what, didn't this guy live to like 30 something? Were they even aware that this was like a terrible thing? Surely like you just look and you see and you make that assumption. Or are these people all just brain dead stupid to begin with? Well, they are inbred. 200 years marrying your second cousin. It also explains why even today people still look inbred.
Interest in men either, for that matter. He seemed to exist in a strange, childlike state, neither boy nor man, but something in between. This terrified the court because Charles had one job above all others, to produce an heir. The entire Spanish Empire, stretching from Europe to the Americas to the Philippines, needed the royal bloodline to continue. But how could a man who couldn't grow a proper beard father children? At age 18, they decided to find out. Charles was married to Marie-Louise of Orléans, a 17-year-old French princess who was
Oh,
by all
no.
accounts beautiful, intelligent, and healthy.
Oh, girl.
The contrast between bride and groom shocked wedding guests. She was
Girl, you're being described as beautiful, and she's got to marry someone who's sticking his damn tongue out because he can't close his mouth. He's just looking off in the distance. How does she feel about this?
radiant. He was ghastly. She walked gracefully down the aisle. He shuffled, supported by attendants. When it came time for the kiss,
Oh,
observers
Lord.
noted that Marie-Louise had to steel herself visibly before leaning in.
Okay, so
The
she
wedding
hated it.
night was a disaster.
It was forced.
Not the kind of disaster that makes for funny stories later, but the kind that determines the fate of empires.
He's looking normal.
Charles, it became clear, was completely incapable of consummating the marriage.
You think?
Not unwilling, incapable. His body simply didn't function as a man should. Marie-Louise, raised in the sophisticated French court, tried everything. She was patient. She was kind.
Anal?
She even, according to palace gossip, tried to instruct her husband in the basics of marital relations. Nothing worked. Years passed. No pregnancy. The Queen underwent humiliating examinations to determine if she was the problem.
No. Hey, you've lost me. She's the problem. He's out here looking like a circus freak. And they're going, miss, I think you're the problem. Even back then, women couldn't catch a break. The most obvious of situations. The most obvious of situations. That is absolute hilarity on a fucking stick.
The physicians declared her perfectly fertile. The problem, everyone knew, but no one would say officially, was the king.
That's
The
wild.
pressure was crushing. Both
They're just all ignoring the obvious problem for 30 years.
Charles and Marie-Louise were subjected to increasingly desperate fertility treatments.
Yeah. She's not fertile despite being just deemed as fertile.
To drink vile concoctions of herbs and animal organs. He was made to consume potions that included ground pearls and bull's blood.
It doesn't work. Nothing's works. You look like a freak. You know what's going to make this better? Let's start playing around with eating animal blood. Let's start eating animal organs. Yeah, that's going to make something better. I mean, what if he turned into an actual demon there on the spot?
At one point, the court brought in a specialist who prescribed eating the dried penis of a stag.
Yeah. Obviously, that's the next step to take.
Charles's reproductive system was as malformed as the rest of him. The story gets even more bizarre. Charles's mother, desperate for a grandchild to continue the Habsburg line, consulted with mystics and holy men.
Oh no.
One suggested that Charles was cursed and that sleeping next to holy relics might break the spell. When that failed, she escalated to something that still shocks historians.
Uh-oh, here we go.
She had her son sleep next to corpses. Yes.
Now, I thought she was going to say that she thought, yeah, let's fix the problem by mating with the son. But instead, they go down the path of, let's exhume a dead body and put it next to him.
You heard that right. The Queen Mother arranged for Charles to spend nights lying beside exhumed bodies of saints and former kings, including his own father.
Holy.
The theory was that the holy...
So you bring this guy into existence, you torture him with existence, you don't actually get a plan B of let's maybe just look after this guy, but let's get another heir, and then you torture him some more by putting his dead father next to him when he's there incapacitated and can barely move. The horrors.
The essence of the dead would somehow cure his impotence.
Hey, but at least he was rich and wealthy, so it's not really that much of a horror. What about all the peasants what are they doing with their lives right now? Probably suffering. Meanwhile, they're pissing about, denying reality.
Picture it. The King of Spain.
Bro is here. He ain't going to do much. Let's get on with finding a plan B for the next skin or whatever.
Drooling and malformed, lying next to decomposing corpse in the hope of gaining the ability to father a child. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of failed attempts, 10 years of humiliation.
Yeah, for her.
Then, Marie-Louise died suddenly at age 26.
Yeah.
The official cause was listed as appendicitis, but rumours swirled. Had she been poisoned? Had the strain
I think she opted out, bub.
of her situation driven her to suicide?
You're using apparatus on her, you're feeding her organs and blood and weird concoctions. You're pretending as if she's the problem when everybody knows what the problem is. Could it be this guy that looks completely different from the rest of us? It's got a massive long jaw that can't close his mouth, that has a tongue like a damn snake. I bet she got her hopes up for a moment there with that thing, but he can't make it work, so it's completely redundant.
What we do know is that Charles was genuinely devastated. Despite everything, he had grown to love his wife, perhaps the only person who had shown him real kindness.
What a simp.
Within months, the pressure to remarry began.
Well, it's the only woman that ever loved him. Buddy, she was forced into marrying you.
The council selected Maria Anna of Neuburg, a German princess from a famously fertile family.
No. They watched this woman suffer for 10 years, and then they forced another woman onto him.
Her parents had produced 17 children. Surely the advisors reasoned such robust genes could overcome even Charles's deficiencies. They were wrong. Maria Anna, despite her healthy lineage, never became pregnant.
Yeah. So what happens if she does get pregnant, and now they've got to have 4 kids? They're all going to look like him. They're all going to suffer. But as long as they keep it in the family and got all that power, it doesn't matter, right?
By this time, Charles's health had deteriorated even further.
Asman?
Courtiers whispered that he looked like an old man, though he was barely 30.
That's totally Asman.
His hair fell out in patches. His teeth, what few could be seen behind that protruding jaw, rotted and fell out. He shuffled when he walked.
Well, that's just like a modern-day Brit.
When he could walk at all. The seizures started in his 30s.
This late?
Without warning, Charles would collapse, his body convulsing, foam mixing with the ever-present drool.
Oh, Charles, whatever the problem? You got an issue?
When he recovered, he often didn't recognise the people around him.
Espanol?
He began talking about seeing ghosts, hearing voices, feeling invisible hands touching him. The court was terrified.
I'm not ever going to really pity a king or a queen or whatever. Never again would feel that. But you do understand the mechanic of feeling sympathy for a human being in this situation. Your entire life is just complete suffering in every single way. I'd be surprised if the internals of his body weren't rotting.
Was their king going mad on top of everything else?
Constant pain.
The nickname El Hechizado, the Bewitched, took on new meaning. People genuinely believed Charles was under a curse. The Spanish Inquisition got involved.
I think it's got inbreeding?
Huh?
Exorcists were brought in. At one point, the king's own confessor was arrested on charges of using witchcraft to worsen the royal condition.
Witchcraft.
The trial
Hey, but weren't women burnt at the stake for witchcraft?
was a sensation.
Hey, what am I talking about? They're forcing women to marry this absolute freak. Women just clearly just don't matter,
Though,
right?
of course, no amount of exorcism
That's
could
just
cure
insane.
genetic damage. Charles himself believed he was cursed. In lucid moments, he would weep and ask what he had done to deserve such punishment. He wore amulets, carried holy relics, and submitted to increasingly bizarre purification rituals. Nothing helped, because nothing could help. His genetic code was his curse, written into every cell of his body. By age 35, Charles looked ancient. Contemporary descriptions are hard to read.
That's
His skin hung loose on his skeletal frame. His famous jaw seemed to grow even more pronounced as the rest of his face wasted away. He was completely bald, his scalp covered in sores. He could barely walk, shuffling a few steps before needing to rest. His speech, always difficult, became nearly impossible to understand. But the worst was yet to come. In his final years, Charles began to mentally deteriorate rapidly. He would sit for hours, staring at nothing, drool pooling on his clothes. When spoken to, he often didn't respond. When he did speak, he rambled about demons and angels, about his dead wife, about children he would never have. The
I was going to say it's bro acoustic, but this ain't even acoustic.
king of one of the world's greatest empires had become a hollow shell. The end came in 1700. Charles was 38 years old, not
Sweet
elderly
release.
by any standard, but his body was shutting down.
That's pretty old, even for the time, isn't it?
He couldn't eat even his specially prepared mush. He couldn't stand without help. He spent his days propped up in bed, gasping for breath. His height
I just love how all these people are so delusional that they still just follow this decrepit individual. Was he public facing whatsoever? Ain't no way. And the fact that he wouldn't be public facing would just give credence to the fact that these people they all know exactly what's up. This guy is not a leader. This guy is nothing. This is all a farce, and everything that we do is a farce. Like, what are the commoners thinking? What are the peasants thinking? Well, maybe that's the point, is that they did catch wind, and that's why the revolution happened after all this, didn't it? After Habsburgs.
bearable pressure. On November 1st, after days of agony, Charles II died.
It was 38 years of agony.
Next would shock even the physicians who had treated him for years. The autopsy. Oh God, the autopsy. If you thought The Living Charles was a medical horror show, his corpse was something out of a nightmare.
Here we go.
The royal physicians tasked with embalming their king cut open the body and recoiled. Their report, written in clinical Latin but dripping with barely concealed horror, described a body that shouldn't have been able to sustain life as long as it did. His body did not contain a single drop of blood.
Yeah, okay, there's a lie.
This
I can see this is not going to be factual.
wasn't poetic exaggeration. Charles's circulatory system had essentially shut down. His blood either clotted or simply absent. His heart, and this is where it gets truly grotesque, his heart was described as the size of a peppercorn.
And then why the hell is it the size of a lamb?
Not literally that small,
Because he consumed lambs in full.
but shriveled, blackened, barely recognizable as the organ that should pump life through a body. His lungs were corroded, their word for what we might now recognize as massive scarring from repeated infections. Imagine lung tissue that looked more like pumice stone than organs meant for breathing. His intestines were described as rotten and gangrenous. Parts of his digestive system had literally died while he was still alive, explaining the horrific pain he endured in his final years. But the most telling,
If a part of your body just rotted and died, then wouldn't you just die shortly afterwards? Like,
the one that confirmed what everyone suspected but no one had dared say officially, Charles had only one testicle, and it was
they didn't look beforehand? It's okay, miss. You have to do this. You have to marry. We're going to inspect every inch of your body. We're going to do everything. You are going to be the problem here, because obviously this circus freak is not going to be the problem, miss. Okay? So we're going to force feed you animal blood. We're going to give you the foulest concoctions, because we've got to solve your fertility issues, ma'am. That's what we're going to do. That's what he said to both their wives. But we're not once going to disturb the utter inner peace of a man by checking to see whether he has the functional organs to be able to perhaps deliver a child. He has one testicle.
atrophied, dead piece of tissue was all that remained of what should have been a functioning reproductive system. No wonder
If you have one look at his head compared to any other human being alive at that time, nothing about this guy is going to be functional, bub.
he couldn't father children. It's a miracle he survived puberty at all. And his brain, Remember that oversized fluid-filled head?
Oh, God.
The physicians found it was indeed full of water. The hydrocephalus had left barely any room for actual brain tissue. How Charles had managed to function at all, how he had managed to speak and think and rule, however poorly, was a medical mystery.
No. Did they just say that he was going to rule however poorly? So he actually was able to make actual decisions and was actually determining the trajectory of what people were doing, yada yada. No way. There was a shadow ruling, someone else was ruling. There's no way they let this utter circus clown.
Who performed this autopsy must have stood there, covered in the gore of their dissection, and marvelled that this collection of malformed organs had somehow sustained life for nearly 4 decades. Every system was compromised. Every organ was damaged. It was as if Charles's body had been at war with itself from the moment of conception. Modern genetic analysis has given us the why behind this horror show. Remember that inbreeding coefficient of 0.254? That means a quarter of Charles's genome consisted of identical copies of genes. In those repeated sequences lurk the instructions for his destruction.
Did these people willfully participate in this stuff, or was it like just forced? It was just they had to do that.
Scientists now believe Charles suffered from at least 2 major genetic disorders. The first was combined pituitary hormone deficiency.
Wasn't there some woman recently on Twitch that was like caught in a relationship with her cousin and she loved every second of it or something? There was some drama.
His body couldn't produce the hormones needed for normal growth and development. This explained his short stature, his inability to sexually mature, his muscle weakness, his cognitive short stature, his inability to sexually mature, his muscle weakness, his pituitary gland, the master controller of the endocrine system, was essentially non-functional. The second was likely distal renal tubular acidosis. His kidneys couldn't properly regulate his blood chemistry. This caused the rickets that bent his legs, the muscle weakness that left him unable to walk and possibly contributed to the hydrocephalus that swelled his skull. Either condition alone would have been challenging. Together they created a cascade of failures throughout his body. Add in the Habsburg jaw, itself a genetic condition called mandibular prognathism, and you had a perfect storm of genetic disasters. Some researchers have proposed an even rarer possibility, a lysosomal storage disease called aspartylglucosamminuria. Patients with this condition develop normally for their first few years, then begin showing delays. By adulthood, they have coarse facial features, intellectual disability, and shortened lifespans. The match with Charles's symptoms is eerily exact. But here's the truly horrifying part. Charles wasn't uniquely unlucky. He was the inevitable result of systematic inbreeding. Of the 34 children born to Spanish Habsburg monarchs, more than half died before age 10.
Did they not stop and think at some moment, yeah, maybe we should stop this business. Maybe we should go outside of the family. We can get them in for 20 years. That's 20 years of power. That's exactly what they thought. They didn't care about the suffering.
The dynasty was literally breeding itself to death, and Charles was simply the final, most extreme example. When Charles died without an heir, it triggered the War of Spanish Succession.
Thank God.
A conflict that would reshape Europe. The Spanish Empire, built over centuries, shattered because one man's body was too broken.
Yeah, I want to read a book on that. History I want to read about, but you just don't get time unless you're a rich, wealthy person.
To produce a single child. The Habsburg line that had ruled Spain for nearly 200 years ended not with the assassination or a revolution, but with a king so inbred his own flesh betrayed him. The Bourbon dynasty that replaced the Habsburgs learned the lesson.
People must have just been so bored back then. Like, if they're just sitting here pretending that this freak is some sort of a deity or someone special, then what the hell have they got going on? Just nothing?
Bred his own flesh betrayed him. The Bourbon dynasty that replaced the Habsburgs learned the lesson. While royal marriages remained political, the extreme inbreeding that created Charles II was never repeated.
Royal marriages remaining political, as in, it's a whole different world to anybody living a normal life. All this is going on when there's peasants and commoners. But these things even have words. They'd start voting for their own best interest. Nah, let's just keep being a little peasant and a commoner.
The nightmare of the Habsburg jaw, the horror of Charles's autopsy.
This image is so funny because this is just like a toned down version of what he actually looked like.
Tragedy of a king who couldn't chew his own food.
The worst part about this image is I literally have seen people that look almost like this.
These became cautionary tales whispered in royal courts across Europe.
30% less than this. Hideous.
Charles II remains in medical textbooks as the ultimate example of genetic collapse. Students studying genetics see his portrait and whispered in royal court reading.
That I've definitely seen before, but that's like not as extreme as it should be, right?
Coefficients. His Habsburg
That's your average guy in England, right?
jaw has become shorthand for the dangers of closed gene pools. In a strange way, his suffering contributed to our understanding of heredity and the importance of genetic diversity. But beyond the medical curiosity, beyond the political consequences, there was a human being. Charles II lived every day in a body that was failing him. He endured constant pain, humiliation, and the knowledge that he was failing in his most basic duty as king. He was mocked as the bewitched, when his only curse was his ancestry. In his final letter, dictated because he could no longer hold a pen, Charles wrote about hoping to find peace in death that had eluded him in life. For a man who had endured 4 decades of physical and mental anguish, who had been propped up on the throne like a grotesque puppet, death must have seemed like mercy.
Like the people, the commoners or whatever, if this person was born into that type of a realm, this guy would have been taken around the back of a tavern and clomped over the head and buried swiftly. Apparently, though, he's allowed to still make life-changing decisions for the population back in his day.
The portrait I mentioned at the beginning? It hangs now in the Museo del Prado in Madrid. Visitors pause before it, struck by the obvious deformities even the court painter couldn't fully hide. But now you know the truth behind that image.
Disgusting.
You know about the jaw that couldn't close, the tongue that couldn't fit, the body that couldn't function, the genome that had turned against itself. Charles II of Spain wasn't cursed by witches or demons. He was cursed by his own family tree, a tree so tangled it had become a noose. His story stands as perhaps history's starkest warning about the dangers of genetic isolation. In trying to keep power in the family, the Habsburgs destroyed their own bloodline. The next time you see a royal
Yeah, but at least they were in power for a really long time, and that's probably all they were thinking about.
portrait, remember Charles II. Remember.
And I guess it worked, because now they're here on a history wall. Meanwhile, the commoners had actually made the world go round back then. Nowhere to be seen. You know, in France, they're living in the catacombs right now, completely nameless, just some bone marrow.
That behind the crowns and sceptres and royal grandeur, biology always has the final say. And sometimes, that final say is horrifying beyond imagination. If this story shocked you, hit that like button, because the algorithm, unlike royal bloodlines, rewards spreading the wealth.
Yes, I will definitely like this video and subscribe for the AI slop and the lack of accuracy throughout all these AI-generated images. I don't even know what to take away from this video. I'm so horrified. Hey, thank you for the experience. Thank you for the video. Thank you for the nightmares. Well, I stopped watching the video, but then I started reading the comments. And this is how you can tell this is aristocracy elite bots in the comment section, because they're all praising, oh, he sounds like a decent guy by royal standards. He didn't do anything to bring on pain. Loved his wife. Tried his hardest to learn as a child and grew up scrutinized and medically experimented on. I feel sad. I'm not going to feel sad for this person. This person represents the oppression of anybody ordinary. I don't give a shit what this person is. Not ultimately. I can understand and sympathize for his struggling as a human being. You know what I mean? Oh, despite all his health problems, he was never cruel. As if to say what they were supposed to be lauded and ruled over. His own mother recalled in horror when he was born. Gut-wrenching. No, that's just hilarious.